So the level to break through was really hard. How those guys could consistently keep on winning. You could just tell, even if I knew his serve was going there, so I could put the return back in play, then it was like...
You were toast.
They have all won on every surface. They're so able to adapt. The sessions were brutal. Mentally building up that barrier of not giving in, just doing anything it takes.
All right, well, welcome to ATP's Beyond the Numbers, presented by Infosys. I'm Jim Courier. We've done a few episodes throughout the year, so here's another one. And today I am delighted to be joined by Australian Open semifinalist, former British #1, fellow ginger with a huge forehand, Kyle Edmund is here. Kyle, great to be with you.
Yeah, great to be with you too.
Already this year, we've talked about a lot of cool stuff. We've talked about rivalries. We've talked about career U-turns. We've talked about the great careers of Monfils and Stan Wawrinka. Today we're going to talk big picture about the champions of our sport, the champions of men's tennis. And it can be a broad definition, and I kind of want to get your take on how you define someone as a champion versus someone who's a tour player.
A tour player is someone, because in tennis, for me, I've said a lot of times, it's a game of failing, as in you're losing every week, and you kind of got to learn that and bounce back. And I always give an example of, unless you're 2 or 3 players, Djokovic at the minute, Sinner and Alcaraz, you're losing every week pretty much. And for me, when I talk about those guys are the champions because they're consistently winning week in, week out. And I think those are what the champions are. And almost subconsciously, let's say a player goes down 2 sets to love like Djokovic, you still go, I think he's still going to win. The journey sort of men players, I think is not a correct term for some of them, because if you're, let's say, 30, 40 in the world, you're a very, very good tennis player, but you would very rarely be winning tournaments. You'd just be getting good results. So that's what defines them. It's like an aura thing as well that they build up over time.
Interesting. All right, so Kyle, it's not just us here. We also have our guru. Ali is here with us, and he's got Ali, the Infosys chatbot, so you'll be able to take care of anything we need, right?
Yes, that's right, Jim. You just tell me what you want, and I'll try pull it up with the help of the AI chatbot Ali, which of course is powered by Infosys.
Well, I think a good place for us to continue this conversation is so many of our fans, they look at majors won and they think of that as sort of a defining characteristic. I certainly think that world #1 and getting there also is it's a monumental achievement. We know that. So maybe we get started looking into some numbers we're nearly 60 years of open tennis now. How many men have won a Grand Slam, a major in the Open era, and how many of those have won multiple majors and reached world #1?
That's a great question, Jim. And of course, Ali has the answer, had it instantly. There's a total of 59 men have won Grand Slam titles in the Open era. Of these champions, 32 players have won more than 1 Grand Slam title, and 29 have reached the #1 ATP ranking in the world.
But there is a difference between the players that don't win majors and the players that do. But what about the players that become the dominant champions? That's a list I think that's quite meaningful.
There's plenty in there, Jim. Let's start with year-end #1 finishes, and Novak Djokovic leads that with 8 year-end #1 finishes, just behind him Pete Sampras with 6, and then it's the duo of Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal, both 5 times, and then Ivan Lendl with 4 #1 finishes to end the year. The ATP players with the most weeks at #2 is interesting. Novak Djokovic still leads, 599 in the top 2. Rafael Nadal in second with 596, only 3 weeks behind him. Federer, 528, Jimmy Connors, 395, and Ivan Lendl, 381. Pete Sampras coming in just behind that, 376. Where we see a little bit of change is players with the most weeks in the top 10, where Roger Federer leads with 968. Novak Djokovic, a few behind, 943 in the top 10. Nadal, 912 for the big 3. And then Jimmy Connors, 817. And Andre Agassi, 747 for the top 5. Some very impressive numbers for the most ATP titles, and it's Jimmy Connors 109 that lead the way, just ahead of Roger Federer with 103 titles, Novak Djokovic 101, and then Ivan Lendl 94, and Rafa Nadal 92.
So you were a part of the tour for many years when you had Novak and Fed and Rafa, who were so dominant in this discussion. What was it like to be on tour and that feeling of watching those champions just continue to put space between themselves and most other players?
I was fortunate enough to play Novak 7 times.
Yeah, nice.
It's probably the player I played most in my career, funnily enough. He was always a level, and where I learnt the most, as in if I have to improve my game, that's where I have to get to. I played, like you say, all the other guys at some point. I did a lot of training with Andy Murray, so that was a big eye-opener for me, especially when I was young. But the way it worked out, it was always those guys winning something. And what was actually so hard, I think, to break through is in the quarterfinals, if it wasn't those guys, the level was still Berdych, David Ferrer, Del Potro, Sodling, Cilic, who's a Grand Slam winner. So the level to break through was really hard, and the depth, even though those guys were dominant, the depth of it was really hard, which I think shows just how impressive how those guys could consistently keep on winning. I think now that those guys have retired, it's like even more remarkable what they achieved.
Yeah, and I think about sort of these players. We're going to always talk about them as the icons of the sport.
Yeah.
And you hear John McEnroe's name a lot because he stayed so present with his TV commentary. He's been kind of a leading figure of the sport on and off the court for so long. And I think a player who sometimes gets lost in the shuffle for his achievements is Ivan Lendl. You think of those two lists that we've just named, the weeks at number one, Lendl's ahead of Rafa. I mean, Lendl, year-end number ones 4 times right there with Mac, and I mean, Lendl just had an immense career. Are there any other players that maybe are not getting their due?
From when I played, I mean, he's just sort of coming to the end now. That I always think about is Stan. I guess he's won 3 of them, but 3 different events and in the same era as all those guys. Going back, it's probably a bit before my time, but that's a guy. Even when I played Cilic, he won the US Open and he made final of Wimbledon and Australian Open.
Yeah.
It's so hard to do. I know how hard it was just to make 1 semi-final or make 14 in the world. But those guys are making Grand Slam finals and winning it. I was looking at Djokovic the other day. He's won over 1,000 career matches on tour, and I was like, that is just unbelievable. It's incredible what he's doing at 39 years old to keep having that consistency. But going back to your point, those are sort of 2 guys that I think of, Stan, Cilic, really proper tennis players. I think we lost a little bit of that, what could have been with Del Potro, because he was unbelievably dangerous. But physical issues, I don't think we saw what could have been with him, you know?
Yeah, we saw the potential. We didn't see the fully realized career because of that. Ali, could you take me back and maybe share some of the career stats for Ivan Lendl? Because I really do think that Lendl gets short shrift in these discussions.
His US Open record was phenomenal. It's 73 wins and 13 losses. But the incredible stat is he made 8 US Open finals in a row, making one of the most successful players in the tournament's history.
8 finals in a row.
When I was training, I'd joke around with my fitness trainer because of the stats and these guys. Is to win your local tournament 14 times is really hard. So going back 8 times, reaching the final is unbelievable. And like I said, from being on the tour and experiencing it, I just understand how hard that is because you're the guy everyone's hunting. And when you're being hunted, that's even harder as well. When you had that expectation from yourself, but also externally, when you have expectation, it adds a huge dimension to it as well.
You want to talk about expectation. When Rafa won his first Roland Garros as a teen, they said, how many times is this guy going to win one? They were thinking, he's probably going to win it 7, 8 times, which just sounded bananas, and he did double that. Let's dig into individual surfaces and the most dominant, our most dominant champions by those surfaces. And Ali, let's start with clay and maybe give us the overall win percentage on those surfaces that will kind of guide us as to the most successful players by surface.
Yeah, time to look at different surfaces for these records and dominance. And Ali's pulled together some nice numbers here. Rafael Nadal, if we start with him and clay, he comes in at 90.47% win rate on that surface. He is the undisputed king of clay, winning 484 matches of 535 in total. And if we look just at Roland Garros in France, he's won the French Open 14 times, and he's only lost 4 games with 112 wins. So that success rate is over 96%. But overall on clay, he's at, as I mentioned, 90.47. Just behind him is Bjorn Borg, 86.1. So a good 4 and a bit % difference there. And Ivan Lendl, 81.03% in third.
Yeah, amazing. And Novak would have been right around there as well. Novak, like, unbelievably gifted on the dirt, but ran into the buzzsaw that was Rafa so many times there.
I always go through it in my head, if there wasn't a player around, as in if Rafa wasn't around, Roger could have won.
Oh my God,
Novak. Yeah. I even play with it. We have 2 Grand Slams on hard courts, 1 on clay, 1 on grass. If we had 2 on clay, 1 on hard, what would the stats be? I mean, it's all ifs, but it's incredible that he won more titles than he had the losses like he did. To Borg, he was amazing on the clay, but he very rarely travelled to Australia, I'm correct in playing.
That's right.
And one of the big tournaments back then was the Italian Open. And I've spoken to various people who remember that time, and they said the Italian Open was just as good as a Grand Slam, and it was a high priority for them. So, and he won that quite a few times.
Yeah.
So if that was a Grand Slam, he would have won even more because of the competition, and he never travelled to Australia. So
that's right.
That just shows even more how good Borg was. And also back in those days, players didn't play on as long as they did now.
Yeah.
Like, no one was playing at 39 years old like Novak. So
Bjorn didn't make it to 29. Bjorn won 6 French Opens, right? 5 Wimbledons, and he was done in his mid-20s at his apex. That was when I was growing up watching tennis. Those are the players that I were watching, and he just seemed absolutely unbeatable on the dirt.
Yeah.
And you thought, well, no one's going to come along and do something crazier than Bjorn at 6, and Rafa just lapped him and more than doubled him. Just wild. And Rafa's record on best of 5 clay, so much tougher to beat him best of 5 than best of 3. And I'm sure the same can be said for Bjorn, because they were such physical players. The longer the match went, the more they just wrung the life out of the opponents, I'm sure. Did you ever play Rafa on clay?
Yeah, Monte Carlo.
How was that?
It was 6-love first set.
Okay.
So I was feeling the full experience of Rafa.
Oh, that's magical. He is just so tough to put away.
You could just tell, even if I knew his serve was going there, so I could put the return back in play, then it was like, that makes no difference. He's still going to...
If you can't get it to his backhand, you were toast.
Exactly,
right?
ragdoll you side to side. You could see why he was so good. His anticipation, his movement. He used the height and spins so well that he'd almost bait you. If you're going to take a risk up here, you're going to have to take a risk. Basically, it's not a clean winner, and that was very hard to do anything off a high backhand. So for me, whenever I had a forehand, I knew I had to make it count. Going back to your best of 5. The difference playing Novak in best of 3 to best of 5. I played him in US Open twice, Wimbledon once, and a bunch of Masters Series. But the level from ball 1 to the end is the same. There's very few dips. And even I won the first set against him 3 times, only won once, but that's because by winning it almost meant nothing. It's like, right, you've got to do this for 3 more hours. It's up to you to keep that rhythm. And it's something that I didn't do as well. I didn't maintain my level as well as he could.
That sounds intimidating.
Yeah.
You know what else was intimidating? Facing
What?
Federer on grass. Ali, can you give us the grass leaders, please, by their careers?
We see something a bit different. We see Roger Federer leading with 86.88%. That's 192 wins in total there. Just behind him, only a percent, is John McEnroe with 121 wins and 20 losses during his career on the grass surface. And Novak Djokovic, 125 wins, 21 losses for 85.62%. So just 0.2% between McEnroe and Djokovic there on grass.
But McEnroe, 3-time champion, but he sneaks in there with a really high win rate. That shouldn't really surprise us. John was great on there, but compared to how many times we saw Roger and Novak win this tournament. It's a little bit surprising that he's in there and ahead of Sampras, who won it 7 times.
Yeah, absolutely. You never necessarily talk about McEnroe and that kind of dominance on grass. We knew he was an amazing player on grass, and often when you have that conversation about him and Wimbledon, it's always connected with Borg and their rivalry. But you never sort of associate with that much dominance. And if I'm right, he did a lot of his winning very early, before 25, right?
He made the semifinals as a qualifier, and then he went to college after that. He went to college. He went to Stanford as a freshman. He was ranked in the top 30 in the world.
That's incredible. That
Wild.
That would never happen these days, but that just shows how good he was. Was that because of his game, you would say? It just naturally suited the grass?
Yeah, absolutely. His game was brilliant for the grass. That slice lefty serve was nasty. The volleys were among the best that we've ever seen. Incredible feel. And he was great at anticipation. And on grass today, anticipation is still vital, but the game back then was played largely out of the air because the court didn't bounce as much.
Yeah.
You know, it was a different, more spongy surface. So players, first and second serve, everyone serving volley because you couldn't stay back and play ground stroke tennis the way that we watch it today.
No.
So it was a fascinating time, and the grass started to transition around 2000. They changed the grass, and it became more durable and certainly more firm underfoot.
Yeah.
And Federer's game, I remember the first time that I saw Federer really excel at Wimbledon. He beat Sampras and then lost to Henman. And he was serving volleying a ton to do that.
Wow.
And then, of course, if you, as you experienced when you were on tour alongside him and would have watched him, he didn't come in as much over the course of his grass court career. What was it like for you trying to play your style of tennis on the grass? Because you're, like me, much more of a baseline focused player.
Yeah, no, I felt I could do that. My biggest thing was the movement, adapting from the clay and the hard courts. And moving on grass, I felt that the biggest change and the confidence in the corners, and something that I didn't do that I see a ton now is the sliding on grass.
Yeah.
It was the clay, then sort of Rafa and Novak made sliding on hard be the new, and now it's the norm. Going back to the game style, I felt I could play my game style on grass. The ball sat up.
Man, it must have been nice.
Checked, yeah. Balls are different now. That's another addition to the sort of conversation.
For those at home who don't know what you mean by the balls are different now, how would you describe the difference in today and yesteryear?
The balls will just get older and fluffier a lot quicker, so therefore it doesn't travel through the air as much. The contact as well, you don't get the same purchase off the racket.
Yeah.
Even on grass courts, where on a new, let's say, hard court, the paint in the sand would rip the ball and you'd see the fluff on the court. Even on grass, the slasher balls will fluff up and you can have these long rallies, which was kind of unheard of in your day. But my favourite combination was the US Open ball on the American hard courts, where it was hot and I felt the ball just really pinged off the court.
Yeah, I feel like the balls these days do fluff up a bit more because because we're playing all poly string. So it's turbocharging the spin that players get, and that's really roughing the felt up on the ball, and then you're getting these incredibly long points too. So it's sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Everyone plays on the hard courts too. So let's get back to Ali and figure out who our best hard court players in the history of open tennis are. Ali?
Yes, Novak might have been third on grass, but he leads the way with hard court, doesn't he? It's 741 wins to only 138 losses. That's 84.3% win rate, which has him at nearly a whole percent ahead of Roger Federer in second place. And then Jimmy Connors, few less wins, but less games played, 490 wins and exactly 100 losses. So his win rate is 83.05, and that's 0.43 less than Roger Federer in second. But Jannik Sinner is flying up that. He is in fifth already with an 82% win rate on hard surfaces. It's 246 wins, but it's all about Novak Djokovic. If we look at the AO specifically, it's 104 wins and just 11 losses.
All right, so Sinner gets in the mix here, but there it is again. Yvonne Lendl just creeps back into the conversation. Jimmy Connors, we shouldn't be surprised. Connors one of our great enduring champions. We're in an era now where we have so many of the players playing late into their 30s at a very high level.
Yeah.
Connors had been the one to do that prior to this generation, really showing that it can be done. Connors made a great run to the US Open semis and was very present on the ATP Tour in his 30s as well. So great to see him mentioned alongside there. But Novak, I mean, what was it like to play that guy I mean, he's still in his prime, for God's sakes.
Yeah,
but
I know.
what was it like? You talked a little bit about how consistent he was throughout, but what about shot for shot? What makes him so great?
When I played him on those courts, I struggled to get any 3 points off my serve. The return was always coming back. You can tell he knows his movement and anticipation is elite, because sometimes when the ball is sitting there, against some opponents you'll expect the ball to be hit really hard and past you, but he doesn't necessarily go for the lines. He'll always hit with margin, a bit of shape, but he knows that you can't do anything off that. That's what I felt when I played him. And his movement, to try and hurt him from the back of the court is hard enough. You very rarely break him down, so you feel like maybe you have to come in, take risk on a big shot. When you come in against a lot of players these days, but especially Novak, if he's got two hands on his racket, sliding, he's hitting over ball on the forehand, he's almost favourite to win that point. You literally have to get him on the stretch, open face, to have any shot. So that's what makes him so vulnerable, that he has the same standard and type of ball when he's set compared to when he's on the run as well. It doesn't matter that he's on the move. He will still have the same quality. And physically, he can do that for hours. Like I say, from ball one to the end, he don't feel like a drop in energy levels or physicality. It's always there, and you feel that on court big time.
We're starting to see a drop in how often we get to see him play on the ATP Tour, sadly. But you know, he's a family man. He's got other commitments these days, and he basically has all the records. But there's one record that he doesn't have, and that's total titles won. Jimmy Connors has a few more than him. So I wonder if at some point he's going to start chasing that. I don't know, but I think about where the game has evolved over the years, sort of the pioneers, if you will. I think Novak has been a pioneer of the sliding defense, and certainly his diet too, going gluten-free, and his fitness levels and the change there. But was sliding in defense, open stance slides, was that something that you grew up seeing and knowing that you needed to do as a player? Because it didn't exist when I was growing up, except on clay.
Yeah, the first guy I really saw do that was Rafa. He was sliding off both wings, both legs, and I think Novak almost took that to another level with the flexibility, and he was the first guy to do it on grass, in my opinion. It was huge in that sense. Like Rafa started, and Novak took it. He'd like lived the life. You could really tell. Like I spent a bit of time with Novak at Laver Cup and Roger, but it was the first time I really spent time around Novak, and you could sort of look into his lifestyle more than you, because before you see from the outside, but actually being inside the change rooms, his diet, his routines, it was really interesting, and he literally lived the life.
Yeah. No, he's been incredible, the changes he's made in his game. I just think about the changes that have happened over tennis and these leading lights that show us what's possible, and I think he's shown us what's possible. Although Kim Clijsters was the first player I ever saw sliding on the court on hard courts and hitting open stance, two-handed backhands, and Kim was incredibly flexible too. So I got to give her a little bit of love too.
Absolutely.
But I hadn't seen anyone hit a lasso forehand until Rafael Nadal came along, and now that's a shot that seems like everyone has a little bit of that ability to instead of finishing across your body like we were taught to do, most of us. You know, a lot of the times you see the players get up and off the ball to create that top spin when it's coming so fast. Did you ever hear the story of how that came to be?
The only thing I know is he never did it in practice, but then when it came to matches, he started doing it.
Yeah, Uncle Tony told the story that when Rafa was kind of in his middle teens, 15, he was starting to play on the lower rungs of the ATP Tour, like the challengers and stuff, and he was coming up against bigger, stronger players, and the ball was coming so fast that he accidentally did it. And then they noticed that it was creating a difficult shot for the opponents to deal with, and kind of the history of the sport changed by accident almost. Someone who also changed, I think, what champions would need to be was Ivan Lendl and his fitness regime. It was a time in the sport when Lendl came along in the early 80s. Players played a lot. They played singles, they played doubles. They didn't necessarily go to the gym and train. It wasn't that professional. And Lendl, he took it to a whole nother level. And I remember Pete Sampras, who I grew up with, and we turned pro the same day and spent our first couple of years training together and playing doubles together on tour.
Yeah.
When Pete was very young, he got invited to go train with Lendl up in Connecticut, a way that Federer did with a lot of young players, and Novak as well, bring in sparring partners. And I remember Pete coming back and saying that Lendl had sent Pete out on a bike with Lendl's fitness trainer in a car in front of him, and Pete had to just follow the guy in the car for like an hour. But Lendl was one of those guys that kind of pushed the envelope. And now, I mean, how scientific was it in your time playing your fitness regime?
I never obviously played with him, but when I was doing my off-season with Andy Murray and Ivan was running them, the sessions were brutal in Miami, Centre Court, Crandon Park in Miami, which is, as you know, humid, brutal, even in December. And we were doing side-to-side 2-cross-1 line for 3 hours, and that was day one. There was no like, we're going to start off with fitness, do an hour on court, work on some technical stuff. It was just straight in. And that was massive. How he structured the off season was hours and hours on court, and mentally building up that barrier of not giving in, just doing anything it takes. Lendl was just super simple in his training, or what I saw, nothing complicated, but you couldn't replace the hard work.
Volume, huh?
It was doing the volume, and that was a massive thing I took away. And never die attitude, being incredibly tough to beat, but there was no shortcuts with Lendl.
One thing that we're seeing these days, everyone's doing the fitness. Everyone is kind of game planning how they're going to get better. But we're seeing technical changes in players that I don't recall seeing a lot of generations prior making these mid-season technical adjustments like Jannik Sinner did last year after the US Open when he didn't have a good serving day and he altered his ball toss. And his serve has improved a lot. And then Alcaraz makes a change before this year, and his service motion looks like Novak's on the take-back. Ollie, what kind of changes have we seen in the numbers? We know they've made the technical changes. Have they actually gotten positive outcomes from those changes?
Yes, that's right, Jim. When we look for dominance, we can look at specific areas, and I've asked Ali to do that. And it is first serve success rate comparison, which has been very, very interesting for both Sinner and Alcaraz. In 2025, Sinner was at 61.9%. That has jumped in 2026. 2.7% to 64.6%, and we've seen that with his results, an amazing start to the year. And then Carlos Alcaraz in 2025 was at 64.2% for his first serve success, and that is now 67.7% in 2026. So that is a climb of 3.5%, and those little margins are massive when it comes to getting wins.
Which is amazing because I track this stuff when I'm doing commentary, that their service speed numbers have not dropped. It's not really. A lot of times if you're going to try and get more first serves in, you have to give something up, right? These guys have just made technical adjustments to their serve, whether it's a ball toss or a smoothed out motion, and all of a sudden they've improved dramatically. That must be pretty discouraging for the rest of the tour to see these guys who have already built seemingly a moat between themselves and a lot of the other players, even in the top 10 besides Novak, to just keep getting better and better. Is pretty intimidating.
Yeah, and I think that's a massive sign of the champions, is their willingness to keep getting better, not being satisfied with just staying where they are, even though they have been incredibly dominant. Rafa, I think, was quite open about that, or the Uncle Tony, about still being willing to adapt, improve, try new things, especially let's say he's going to win on the grass court for the first time. And like you said, it's pretty scary that they're already dominating and they're wanting to get better. And I think throughout this conversation there's a theme as that they're all willing to get better and adapt to services to improve their game, but their success shows that how well they can adapt. They have all won on every surface, every Grand Slam they've won, pretty much. And I think that shows they're not just, they can't play on one surface or there's like a one-trick pony. They're so able to adapt, which I think is another dimension to their game, which makes them incredibly strong.
How about Sinner winning all the Masters 1000s already?
Already.
At his age,
Yeah.
he's got the box set.
Which is pretty scary.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and those accomplishments maybe don't get talked about in the moment. That they are mentioned, but when you reflect on the careers, like let's say Roger and Rafa right now, and Novak, it's amazing to look at those achievements like we're doing with Lendl, sort of saying that you forget about it. It's actually incredible what they've done, and Alcaraz and Sinner are on their way to doing that, you know.
Yeah, these incredible, amazing champions, but they didn't have quite the length of career that we're getting more accustomed to seeing. And I think some of that, and I was very much involved in this too, is the art of schedule management. Back in that generation, players played a lot more exhibitions in between ATP events. There weren't as many breaks in the schedule as some of the top players that we see these days might take. And I think about Roger Federer is the guy who's really created a template for the younger players and even for Novak today as to how to treat that back half of their career and how to space out a little bit more time in the schedule to freshen up mentally as much as physically. Ali, I'd like to know if you could tell me some of our best players. Let's go with Roger and Rafa and Novak and Jimmy. These are players who played deep into their 30s at a very high success rate. How many average tournaments did they play when they were in their 20s compared to in their 30s? How did they change as their careers went on?
As you say, Jim, it's all about keeping the body fresh and fit because you have to. As your career goes on, it's a lot harder into your 30s. So I've got Ali to pull up those numbers for you. And it's really interesting. In their 20s, Roger Federer, let's start with him, played 177 tournaments at an average of 18.6 per year. That went down to 134 tournaments in the 30s, so down to 13.4 a year. So a drop of 5 tournaments per year. Rafael Nadal, similar. He started at 17 tournaments per year in his 20s. That went down to 9, obviously a few injuries in there as well, but in nearly half, so he could keep his body fit and firing. He still won titles in his 30s, of course. Novak Djokovic was at 18.6 tournaments per year in his 20s. That has gone down to 11.5 in his 30s, and he is still, of course, going strong. And then if we go a bit further back, it's been the same throughout history. Jimmy Connors, he did 22 tournaments per year in his 20s. That went down to just under 15 during his 30s. And finally, John McEnroe was just over 18 tournaments in his 20s. And yes, it was around 14 for his 69 tournaments in his 30s. So preserving your body goes a long way to being dominant and having an incredible record throughout your career.
It seems to me like when you've had the start to the careers that Sinner and Alcaraz are having right now, that they're likely to follow this template as well as they get a little bit older in their career. Obviously, we hope that they're healthy, and we know Carlos is having some trouble with his wrist right now. But assuming that he's able to get back on track, I'd love to see them have this go hard in your 20s when you're young and you're fresh. But in your 30s, pull back on the throttle and be a little bit more focused on longevity.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can do it because your body allows it, and even sort of chasing the Davis Cup, committing to those a few years to, because that's another conversation, but Davis Cup is still a great event to win for your country. It's still very valuable, and those guys will all want to win it in their own way. So it is interesting. I already think, maybe because of the introduction of the slightly longer events on the ATP, that they're already load managing with Yannick and Carlos. We can see them slightly pick and choose their events because of their dominance. The big ones still remain the focus, but there's certainly, it's about the Masters, the Thousands and the Slams right now. You don't see a lot of the other the tournaments being played right now. But they're playing way less. Someone asked me, let's say a junior, how much you should be playing, and I said should probably aim to be playing around 25 to 30 events a year. These guys are playing a lot less because then they can afford to because of their success, but also in their 30s it drops to like 13, 14 events, which is not a lot of events, but that's why they schedule it so they can peak at the right times and get the most value out of it.
We look at some of the great individual seasons that players have had. Those tend to happen more in the 20s than in the 30s. There are some exceptions. Novak has had some incredible seasons in his 30s where he phenomenal season. But Ali, can you just give us the greatest seasons, individual seasons on the ATP Tour of all time?
We do open with Roger Federer. 2006, 90 matches won, the most ever for 12 titles. In second place, it's Thomas Muster, 95. He got a mention a few weeks ago in our episode looking at career U-turns, didn't he? That year was 84 matches won and 12 titles in 1995. It's a big list. Number 3 is Novak Djokovic, 2015. He won 81 matches for 11 titles. In fourth, Pete Sampras, 1993 with 80 matches and 9 titles. It is a veritable who's who because in fifth place is Rafael Nadal, 79 matches won and 8 titles. Those names then all appear again at 6, 7, 8 and 9. But in 10th place, a shout out to Andy Murray for 2016. 75 matches won and 9 titles for the Brit. Phenomenal effort. But then followed up with the best win percentages, and it's actually different names. John McEnroe's 84 season, he only lost 2 games of 77 for a win percentage of 97.4. Just behind that in 74 was Jimmy Connors with 95.92 record. So out of 98 games, he only lost 4 of them. Roger Federer 05 actually did a little bit better percentage-wise than 06. He won 80 and lost 4 compared to losing 5 and winning 90. Both those records around 95%. And Novak Djokovic in 2011 was a 93.33% record, winning 70 of 75 games. Remarkable.
That's rare air to have those type of years. We'll see if Alcaraz or Sinner can have that type of a season. But what we can see from them, and we've seen recently from Novak, is these winning streaks. And Sinner has had an amazing winning streak going before he was felled at Roland Garros by the Heat and by Juan Manuel Cerundolo. But we've had some great win streaks with the modern players. But I think, Ali, if we go back to the all-time win streaks on the ATP Tour, we're going to get some older names than the big 3. What do you got for us?
Yes, Ali, powered by Infosys. Loved this one, looking at dominant seasons. That is one way to measure this and talk about great champions. There have been some incredible seasons so far. If we look at the longest winning streaks, Bjorn Borg leads the way. In 1979 to 1980, it was 47 consecutive wins he got on the trot. Guillermo Villas with 44 in 1977. Then Ivan Lendl with 44 as well in 1981. And Bjorn Borg did it again in 1978. So just before the 47, he did 43. That's your top 5. And then we enter Novak Djokovic. He had 41 consecutive wins in 2011. John McEnroe did it twice. He did 40 in 1983 to 84. Then had a loss and then went for 39 consecutive wins again in 84 to 85. Roger Federer managed 39 as well in that famous 2006-2007 season. And then Novak Djokovic with another entry with 37 wins in 2020. And finally, Jimmy Connors did 36 wins in 1974. Some incredible numbers and feats of pure dominance in there.
I remember Thomas Muster had a great run when I was playing on tour, and he was winning a lot of the smaller clay court tournaments in Europe to pad that, but he was also winning some big tournaments. And just thinking, are these guys ever going to lose? And when Novak had that start to the season, and he finally lost to Roger at Roland Garros in the semifinals, it felt like he was never going to lose too. That was an amazing time. Yeah,
that was incredible, and he was also on that run where he had got that bit of psychological dominance over Raf. I think they always were playing in the finals and stuff. But that was incredible, and that was amazing to watch in the French because it was that whole build-up and Roger won. It was a little bit of like, I've still got something type there to do it, but it's like you say, ridiculous the word you use, and it is just from playing on the tour and knowing how hard it is just to win 1 week and beat the amount of players you have to beat and the top guys to go again the next week and the next week, different surface, different conditions. It's incredibly hard to do, and that's why going right back at the start, those champions, they can do that.
My longest win streak was in the 20s. I won a couple hard court tournaments in Asia in the spring that are no longer there. And then I came over and I won in Rome, and I got to the finals of Roland Garros and lost in the finals against Bruguera there. But I remember that feeling of, I just trust myself. When the chips are down, I don't have any doubts. And I think most players, even within matches, you might have that little tinge of doubt. but the overt confidence that all those wins gives you, it is like being bulletproof for a little time.
It's almost when you're in that moment, I don't know what it's like to win 40-odd matches, but you almost do less thinking, I imagine. Everything's just flowing. You don't overcomplicate things. It's coming to you, and you have to earn that to get in that position, which is why they do all the hard work behind the scenes and the mental, working on your mental side. And when you earn that right to be in that position, that's everything you work for. That's why you are spending your whole life dedicating to tennis.
We touched on this earlier. You were talking about players like Cilic, who won a major, but also played in a very difficult era of Wawrinka. I think about some other consistently great players who played in your era. Guys like Andy Murray, 3 majors. Doesn't seem like that's fair that he only won 3. Yes, he won 2 gold medals, and those count big as well. But I think about Andy Roddick, who won 1 major but was in many finals, including 3 at Wimbledon. And I think about sort of the hard luck of where they could have been in different eras and what they could have done, and things that I look to, sort of facts that I think are really important as far as a career go. Weeks in the top 10, weeks in the top 5. Where do Murray and Roddick stand in that department? Because I think they're huge numbers.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Looking just below the absolute famous iconic names, the big 3s along those lines, we do find the Andys. So Andy Murray spent a total of 449 weeks in the top 5 and then 509 weeks in the top 10 of the ATP rankings. He also had very impressive consecutive streaks. He went for 281 consecutive weeks in the top 5 from September 08 to January 2014. Quite remarkable. And we look at Andy Roddick, he was 208 weeks in the ATP top 5, but then 440 weeks in the ATP top 10. So nearly double that from 6 to 10 in the rankings.
Yeah, that's nearly a decade for Murray, and Roddick not far behind. And I think about someone who's dealing with an injury right now, and I hope we get him back soon, and that's Holger Rune. Holger has already put up 20 weeks in the top 5, and he's had nearly 100 weeks in the top 10, and he's missed almost a year now with injury. So he's a player, again, who at the moment hasn't won a major, hasn't made it to a major final, but already stacking some pretty good numbers along that line.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's probably in that bracket of the guys knocking on the door. Zverev did it for so long. And it's kind of up to them and Felix and those guys to see if they can push through. But Holger's been very consistent. I was actually amazed at how consistent Zverev has been in his career. I mean, he's obviously got the ranking to prove that, but he's always in the semi-finals and stuff. But tennis, similar to Alcaraz's injury, Draper's injury, tennis needs these guys. It's horrible when they're out the sport. Tennis is no better with them out the sport. Tennis needs them. It helps the game. They push each other. They drive everyone along. So when I see those guys out, I just think it's not good for the sport. So I always want to see them back, and also for a fan, you want to see those guys playing because it's gives more options to upsets as well.
All right, so I totally agree with that. We've got these 2 champions right now that have emerged, right? That have done incredibly well with Sinner and Alcaraz. So the question is, can they sustain it? I think if they're healthy, they certainly will. But the other question that we all want to know the answer to is, who can join them from their generation? Zverev is a generation older than them. He's now a major champion, and that might free him up to win multiple majors now. But who do you see who's emerging right now from the pack that might be able to join them and be maybe the 3rd guy or the 4th guy in a conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think the guy who's got that level really on the day is Draper. It's hard to know right now where he stands because he needs to spend some consistent time on court. But before, he had the ability and the game, like that actual power and danger, weapons. You need weapons to beat these guys, and he had that. So it's a real shame that he's not here, but I believe he had that run semi-finals of the US Open.
No, he won Indian Wells too.
Yeah, beat Alcaraz.
Sure
there, right?
did.
So he has that. Final of Madrid, lost to Rude, I think, as well. So he's one guy there. The other guys I think have been knocking around for a while. Like Felix is close. He's right there. Like Rublev's been around for a while. Those kind of things. Dimonor to maybe break into a semis and a final. He's missing something which he's the type of player that would be working extremely hard on. I think lower down for me, the guys that I've seen that have that potential is Fonseca and Khadar. They seem like really exciting that they can build those weapons. I think to want to get a bit more experience and a bit more sort of learning, like tour experience, like week in, week out traveling. What it's like to win those big matches, I think they can prove dangerous for the future.
I'll give you one more name. I agree with all those.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw in Arthur Fils as well from France. When he's healthy, and he's just put Goran Ivanisevic on his team, so his serve is going to improve because we know Goran improves everybody's serve by lowering their ball toss and giving them better rhythm. So expect that to come. And moves great. He's got a bomb forehand. He had the fastest forehand on tour last year in 2025. Wow. So, again, we need some of these young guys to be healthy. And it might be Musetti, who's made some deep runs too. Another guy who's just a beautiful player to watch. And on the clay, I think we could easily see him winning a couple Roland Garros. And he plays well on grass too.
Fils is a really good one because he was injured, but even when he did come back, he immediately picked up match wins, and he's made far one tournaments this year already, right?
Oh yeah.
So he's definitely one to. And Wimbledon, I think, was his first Grand Slam in a year, something like that, because he missed Australia and the French. But he's still so young. Yeah. You forget that because he's actually been on tour a little bit now.
Yeah. Well, we've been blessed in this Open era with so many amazing champions. We're in a current great era, but there's going to be more that will emerge. It's going to be fun to watch how the game develops on the ATP Tour, where it goes from here. But so far, it's been great. It's been great spending some time with you, Kyle. It's great to see you again.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah, and thanks everyone for watching us here. That's another episode of ATP Beyond the Numbers, presented by Infosys in the books. So stay tuned for the next one.